Volume 4 of the 5-volume hardback set, Chapter 453, titled Near Gamala, Jesus entrusts the Church to the Blessed Virgin and speaks of mercy on oppressed people. A vision given to Maria Valtorta on the 8th of July 1946. Day is just dawning when Jesus awakes and sits up on his rustic bed made of earth and grass. He then stands up, picks up his sandals and the mantle with which he had covered himself as a protection from dew and the chill of the night, and cautiously steps over the tangle of legs, arms, bodies and heads of the apostles asleep around him. He moves away a few steps, with keen eyes to see where he lays his feet in the subdued gleam of dawn, which under the leafy trees is barely a feeble light. He arrives at an open meadow, from which, through an opening between trees and rocks, one can catch a glimpse of a little strip of a lake, which is waking up, and a large piece of the sky, which is becoming clearer, passing from the grey-blue hue typical of the vault of heaven at daybreak, to sky blue, while to the east it is already fading into a light yellow shade, which becomes more and more defined, and deeper, changing into a rosy yellow, and finally into a most beautiful pale coral hue. Dawn promises a lovely day, despite a very light haze which is reluctant to surrender the eastern sphere of the sky to daylight, and moves forward in such light veils of clouds that the blue sky does not suffer by it. On the contrary, it is embellished as if it were an ornament of snow-white muslin, fringed with gold and corals constantly changing, and becoming more and more beautiful, as if it were striving to reach the perfection of its fleeting beauty before being destroyed by daylight with its triumphant sunshine. To the west, on the other hand, a few stars are still visible, although deprived of their bright night twinkling as light increases, and the moon, about to set behind the tops of mountains, sails on, looking very pale with no moonbeams, like a dying planet. Jesus, standing barefooted on the dewy grass, his arms folded across his chest, his head raised watching the rising day, is pensive. Or is he speaking to the Father in a spiritual conversation? There is dead silence, so much so that the large drops of abundant dew can be heard falling on the ground. Jesus, still standing with arms folded, lowers his head and becomes engrossed in an even deeper meditation. He is completely absorbed in himself. His magnificent wide open eyes are fixed on the ground, as if they wished to wring a reply from the herbs. But I am sure that they do not even see the slow movement of stems quivering in the cold breeze of dawn, like people who wake up, stretch, turn round, stir themselves in order to awake completely, and be thus alert in all their nerves and muscles. He looks, but does not see the awaking of herbs and wild flowers, with their little branches, leaves, corollas shaped like umbrellas, or growing in clusters, spikes, and tufts. Some of the flowers are isolated in calices. Some are shaped like radiant crowns or snapdragons, cornucopias, plumes, or berries. Some are stiff on their stalks. Some are soft, hanging from stems which are not their own, and round which they have twined. Some are lying and creeping on the ground. Some are grouped in families of many little low humble plants. Some are solitary, large, violent in hue and carriage. They are all intent on shaking off their petals, the dewdrops, which they no longer want, eager as they are now for sunshine only, as whimsical in their desires as in their layout. They are thus very much like men, who are never satisfied with what they have